the zenith of glory and the seeds of disobedience. Prepare yourself. What you are about to hear is not just a story, but a cosmic warning, a truth that defies comprehension and shapes reality itself. Stay with us until the end, because what you are about to discover about Lucifer and his fall is the key to understanding much more than you imagine about the shadows stirring in our own world. To grasp the magnitude of his fall, we must first ascend to the heights from which he plummeted. Imagine a realm of pure light and melody, where time and space bent to Creator's will. The heavens, a vibrant universe, pulsating with divine glory, populated by myriads of celestial beings, each with their role, their function, their praise. A symphony of worship and harmony that filled the cosmic void with purpose and perfection. Nothing could rival the magnificence of that original creation. In this panorama of unfathomable perfection, there existed a hierarchy, a sacred order that ensured infinite peace and collaboration. And at the apex of this structure, among those closest to the eternal throne, was he, Lucifer. His name, bearer of light, was not merely a title, but a description of his very essence. He shone brighter than all others, a beacon of splendor that eclipsed legions of angels. His beauty was so overwhelming that the seraphim themselves marveled. His wisdom was profound, his intellect a jewel cut by the divine mind. His voice, a symphony that led to heavenly choirs, capable of moving hearts and inspiring devotion. He was the anointed cherub, guardian of divine jewels, a being of perfection in all his ways, without blemish, without fault until the beginning of his end. But how can we, mortal beings, even begin to unravel the story of an archangel, a celestial being from before time began? How can we discern the steps of a tragedy that unfolded even before the first star was named? The clues, the fragments of this cosmic truth, are preserved in some of humanity's most ancient and revered texts, the Holy Scriptures. From somber prophecies in Isaiah 14:12, which speak of a morning star that fell from heaven, a light extinguished in its own splendor, to poetic and detailed descriptions in Ezekiel 28:13a-17, which portray him as a perfect cherub in the garden of God, adorned with all precious stones, full of wisdom and beauty, until iniquity was found in him. The Bible offers disturbing glimpses of who Lucifer was and what he became. These texts, written by inspired men over centuries and across distinct cultures, seem to echo the same terrible truth, that the greatest glory can become the deepest ruin. The seed in the seed was pride. It was not a flaw in creation, an inherent defect in his divine design, but a conscious choice, a poison that began to corrode the most luminous soul in the universe. Lucifer, the most beautiful, the wisest, the most honored, began to look at his own glory instead of at the source of all glory. He began to contemplate not the perfection of him who created him, but his own perfection. A fissure opened in his immaculate soul, a crack of vanity that allowed subversive thoughts to enter. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also on the mount of the congregation. I will be like the Most High. This was not just an idea. It was a silent rebellion simmering within him, a self-proclamation of divinity that challenged the very essence of the Creator. Every thought of self-exaltation was a step deeper into darkness. The brilliance of his divine light began to dim, replaced by a cold fire of ambition and resentment. The worship due to the Creator became coveted by himself. Thus began Lucifer's descent into darkness, an act that would change the destiny of all existence. No thought is hidden from him who created everything. No whisper of betrayal, no malicious intent, however disguised, goes unnoticed in the universe he sustains. Lucifer's silent rebellion was no secret to the Most High. He, who is pure love and justice, saw the tragedy forming, the heart of his most splendid angel hardening, and, with infinite patience, but also inflexible justice, came the divine warning to Lucifer. It was not a deafening thunder, nor an immediate condemnation, but an unquestionable truth uttered in the heart of the cosmos, a moment of overwhelming clarity for the angel hurtling towards the abyss. One last chance. The Creator's voice, which had once called Lucifer into existence and crowned him with glory, now spoke with the authority of one who saw the impending tragedy. How you are fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn, was a lament a warning, a mirror showing Lucifer the abyss into which he was plunging. It was an opportunity to repent, to turn from the path of perdition, to remember the love and glory from which he had come. But Lucifer's pride had already solidified into stone, transforming his diamond heart into a blind grain of sand. He rejected the outstretched hand, ignored the wisdom that sought to save him. The divine warning, instead of halting his fall, only served to harden his heart and seal his fate. Even in the face of explicit rejection of the stubbornness of a being who had chosen the path of perdition, the magnitude of divine love manifests in a way that defies our comprehension. To the one who, even then, was already a potential traitor, to the angel who refused to heed the warning, the source of all life offered something almost unthinkable. God gives Lucifer a second chance, not in words, but in a manifestation of his essence that echoed the beauty and perfection Lucifer had once known. It was not an imposition, but a last, grand demonstration of patience, a door still open for return. It was a chance to see the truth, no longer as a warning, but as an invitation to redemption, an opportunity to bow, not out of compulsion, but out of recognition of goodness and sovereignty. All of heaven must have held its breath. Thousands of angels, watching the cosmic drama unfold, witnessed the depth of forgiveness and hope that emanated from the throne. But, unfortunately, the seed of pride had already taken deep root. The second chance was not seen as an act of mercy, but as a sign of weakness, a validation of his own strength in defying the Creator. Lucifer's stubbornness eclipsed any remnant of light or humility. The refusal was final. Grace was spurned. The refusal of the second chance was not merely an act of disobedience. It was a key to the unveiling of a plot that shocked the heavens. Until then, Lucifer's rebellion was an internal conflict, a seed of pride. But now, in an unprecedented act of audacity, he stepped forward, revealing the full extent of his ambition. It was the great revelation. Lucifer, the bearer of light, no longer hid his intention. With rhetoric as brilliant as his former glory, he began to spread his subversive ideas. He argued that the Creator's sovereignty was an unnecessary yoke, that angels should have the right to govern themselves, to determine their own destiny. He painted a picture of a universe where individual freedom was supreme and divine authority, a tyranny that stunted the true potential of celestial beings. He promised a new order, a better way to existence, where knowledge would be boundless and self-governance, the law. His sharp intellect and magnetic charisma were powerful weapons, used to sow discord where harmony once reigned. He distorted the truth, sowed doubt, and painted divine love as control and obedience as slavery. The impact was devastating. The heavens were divided, the veil of illusion torn, exposing the terrible truth. There was a silence heavier than 1,000 suns. The entire universe seemed to hold its breath. After all the glory, all the mercy, all the patience, Lucifer finally did the unthinkable. With the arrogance of one who considers himself equal, with the megalomania fueled by boundless pride, Lucifer challenged God, not in secret, not in whispers, but in an open declaration, a cry of rebellion that echoed through all dimensions, shaking the very foundations of creation. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. The words were not just a desire. They were a direct affront to the unquestionable sovereignty of the Creator. He placed himself on an equal footing, usurping the place that rightfully belonged only to him who brought everything into existence. He gathered his followers, a third of the celestial hosts, those who were seduced by his promises of freedom and power, and, before the perplexed universe, he raised his banner of rebellion. It was no longer a debate. It was an insurrection. A cosmic war was being declared by the one who, one day, had been the greatest herald of heavenly peace. Part 2. The Celestial War and its Consequences. When the shadow of betrayal threatened to engulf the light of the heavens, a figure rose to defend the truth, not a being of pride, but of pure loyalty, the Archangel Michael. His name, who is like God, was the very answer to Lucifer's challenge. Michael, the prince of celestial hosts, did not hesitate. He faced the fallen bearer of light, not with hatred, but with an unwavering determination to protect the divine order. He placed himself between the light and the growing darkness, becoming the bulwark of faithfulness. His intervention was not merely an act of bravery. It was a landmark. He personified the choice between arrogance and humility, between rebellion and obedience. And so, with the echo of Lucifer's refusal and Michael's courageous affirmation, the universe was plunged into its first and most devastating conflict, the beginning of the rebellion. It was a day the celestial ether was stained with war, the day the melody of choirs transformed into the clamor of conflict. Lucifer's rebellion erupted into total war. Angels turned against angels. Celestial brethren brandished weapons of light and darkness against each other. What followed was a cosmic carnage, not in flesh and blood, but in essence and light. The power unleashed in this conflict shook the foundations of dimensions, shuddered stars, and tore the very fabric of the universe. It was a battle of pride against loyalty, of ambition against order. Lucifer's hosts, seduced by his deceptive rhetoric, fought with blind fury, while Michael's armies defended the honor and sovereignty of the Creator. Heaven would never be the same again. For days, or perhaps for eons on a celestial scale, the war dragged on, an indelible stain on the perfect tapestry of creation. But in every great conflict, there is a turning point, a decisive moment. And for the first cosmic conflict, the final battle arrived. At the heart of the maelstrom, where the purest light collided with the densest darkness, stood they, Michael, the champion of the Most High, and Lucifer, the bearer of light, who became the Prince of Darkness. It was not just a physical combat, but a clash of philosophies, a struggle between unconditional loyalty and limitless pride. Michael, with his gleaming sword of truth, represented divine order. Lucifer, with his distorted fury, personified the chaos of unchecked ambition. The power unleashed was indescribable. The intensity of the combat between these two archangels reverberated throughout all creation, determining the fate of billions. The victory was not just about power, but about truth. And despite all of Lucifer's power and cunning, lies and discord cannot prevail against the supreme truth. Michael's light, unwavering, began to pierce the darkness. The battle cry of the loyal angels echoed with renewed strength. The rebel armies, led by a being whose light was rapidly fading, began to waver. Lucifer's defeat was inevitable. And so, at the climax of the battle, with one last and devastating blow of justice, Michael sealed the fate of the fallen bearer of light. And then came the expulsion and Lucifer's fate. It was not a simple fall, like that of a weary star, but cataclysmic expulsion, an act of irrevocable separation. Like lightning, Lucifer was cast out of the heavens, dragging with him his third of rebellious angels. They fell not only through dimensions, but through their very essence. Glory abandoned them. Light rejected them. Every particle of their beauty was corrupted. What was beauty became deformity. What was light became darkness. The name Lucifer, bearer of light, was stained, transformed into Satan, the adversary, the accuser. His crown was stripped, his throne usurped by his own pride. And they fell into a bottomless abyss, a place of torment and darkness, which became known as hell, the realm of damnation and divine absence. From Prince of the Heavens to Sovereign of the Abyss, the once brightest of archangels met his tragic end. But Lucifer's story did not end with his fall. On the contrary, it only began its most influential, more subtle, and, for us, more dangerous phase. From the abyss of his damnation, he did not resign himself. The fall was not the end of his ambition, but the beginning of his most insidious strategy. Expelled from heaven, he turned his fury and his perverted intelligence toward the Creator's new focus, humanity, the crown of the new creation. And so began Lucifer's influence in the world. He became the whisperer, the deceiver, the sower of discord. From Eden, with the serpent's temptation, which promised knowledge and divinity in exchange for disobedience, to the present day, his shadow has stretched over human history like a cloud of deception, not with brute, visible power, but with the mastery of illusion. He does not force, he seduces. He does not compel, he convinces. He perverts truth, distorts goodness, and paints evil as freedom, slavery as power. His tactic is manipulation, spiritual blindness, the exacerbation of the worst human impulses, transforming vice into virtue and depravity into progress. Part 3. Lucifer's dominion on earth and the final confrontation. Observe the world around you, and the evidence becomes undeniable, shaking the head of anyone who dares to look. The evils committed on a global scale are a stark testament to his influence and dominion. This is not about physical governance, with visible laws and armies, but about control over the system of things that governs the world. Think of the incessant wars that tear continents apart, driven by hatred and greed, the systemic corruption that diverts resources and condemns millions to misery while a few feast, the injustice that oppresses the weak and favors the powerful, the environmental degradation that destroys our common home for unchecked profit. All of this echoes the original rebellion, the selfish pursuit of power and autonomy above all order and compassion. He is a god of the system of things, the ruler of the world, not by divine designation, but by human appropriation and acceptance through the manipulation of wills. He does not wish to be seen, but for his effects to be felt in every corner of the planet. With every act of injustice, every seed of lies planted in the human mind through media, propaganda, distorted ideologies, his invisible hand is there, operating as evil. The worship of materialism, the relentless pursuit of empty pleasures, indifference to the pain of others, the exaltation of image over essence, all are traps he weaves to divert us from the true path and imprison us in his web of illusion and selfishness. He fuels division among people, whether by race, politics, religion, or social status, because disunity weakens resistance to his influence. He is the constant adversary, the tireless accuser, seeking every moment to lead us away from the light and drag us into the same darkness that consumes him. His war is now for the human soul, for faith, for truth, and he uses every loophole, every weakness, every temptation to consolidate his dominion over the realm he once thought he could conquer. But the narrative does not end here. Lucifer's cosmic drama has a final act, prophesied since ancient times, a confrontation that will transcend history and seal the fate of all that exists, because the story of Lucifer's fall is intertwined with humanity's ultimate destiny. And it is in the pages of Revelation that he will make his last and most audacious move. Yes, Lucifer's story culminates in the grandest and most terrifying of all books, Revelation. In it, the ancient bearer of light, now the great dragon, the ancient serpent Satan, will make his last desperate attempt to usurp the divine throne and destroy creation. This is Lucifer's role in Revelation. All his intrigues, all his temptations, all his lies throughout the millennia will converge to a single point, the final battle, Armageddon. He will raise his armies, mobilize his forces, and attempt to deceive the entire world, gathering it for the ultimate confrontation against the Creator himself and his armies. He will manifest in his maximum power through false messiahs and false prophets, seeking the adoration that was once denied to him in heaven. However, it is crucial to be aware of Lucifer's traps, for he is loose and subtly enticing us to do evil. He will not come with horns and pitchforks, but cloaked in desire, perverse reason, and self-sufficiency. We must be vigilant against the love of money, which is the root of all evil and a primary tool of his seduction. The incessant pursuit of human power and recognition, the glorification of ego, indifference to the suffering of others, the validation of morality in purely human, not divine, terms. All these are openings for his influence. He tempts us to justify evil, to relativize truth, to doubt inherent goodness, and to succumb to despair, which paralyzes us and pulls us away from hope. The main weapon against his insidious ways is discernment. It is necessary to educate the mind and heart to recognize deceptive whispers, to identify manipulation disguised as freedom, to reject the vanity that distances us from humility and true wisdom. Vigilance is constant, against entertainment that normalizes violence and selfishness, against narratives that promote division and hatred, against voices that incite us to greed and perpetual dissatisfaction. We need to strengthen our ties with what is pure, true, and loving, seeking guidance that transcends the mundane and empowers us to resist the ploys of one who wants to see us fall. But the prophecies are clear. The end is already written. The same power that expelled him from the heavens, that sealed his destiny and cast him into the abyss, will be the same that defeats him once and for all. The one who refused to bow before God will finally be subdued. His rebellion, which began with a whisper of pride, will end with a cry of defeat. Lucifer, From incomparable beauty to abjection, from the purest light to the deepest darkness, from archangel to adversary, from king of heaven to sovereign of a realm of damnation. His saga is an eternal warning about the danger of pride, the fragility of perfection, and the power of choice. His story, which began at the pinnacle of the heavens, finds its sealed end in the lake of fire. But as long as time endures, his influence will continue to be a force to be reckoned with, a constant reminder that the battle between light and darkness, between truth and lies, is a struggle that unfolds not only in celestial realms, but also, and most importantly, within each of us and in the systems we build. The choice, after all, always has been and always will be yours. For more profound insights and discussions on topics like this, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel